All right, welcome everybody. Today is February 25th, I believe, 2021, and this is a SIG architecture community meeting. Please, everybody, be respectful, and let's get started. So, Alana Ashman, you have the first agenda item, if you want to introduce the topic.
Great, what an honor. So I sent this email to raise this topic for discussion. So essentially, the Kubernetes as a project right now says that we have n-2 SKU version support for the kubelet, which means that like if we have an API server that's on 120, in theory, a 118 kubelet should be compatible with it. But I was doing some research and I could not actually find anywhere that we were testing for this compatibility. And so I raised this in SIG not this week, but the week before. And Dawn gave some really great history on what we had done with this stuff. And from what I can tell, we haven't actually tested for this in CI as like a release blocking thing or something like that since around the 114 release. So I discussed within SIG and SIG said, well, we didn't own those tests. Those were part of cluster lifecycle. I think, go and talk to either the conformance group because it's a conformance gap or to SIG architecture and see what they say about what we should be doing for this. So I sent the email. I am raising it here. I would like to discuss. I think that we should either do one of two things. We should say, we don't test for it. It's not actually supported. Let's stop saying it's supported. Or we go and we put the test infrastructure in place to do the verification to ensure that we can safely say, yes, of course it's supported.
Okay, thank you. And I was just saying before we started recording, that's why I started recording, that yes, I think personally that we absolutely should be testing this. I know we depend on it, on this compatibility SKU, and I think Derek had some comments with respect to that.
Yeah, so I definitely agree we should be verifying what we presently claim. And I think the latest state on this thread was that a PR was open to try to meet that verification, if my memory serves me well from yesterday, except that the need is that test is done through kind, and it's not necessarily requiring a true host in the sense of what kubelet would say is supported. Personally, I think that that's a fine outcome in that the SKU testing is intending to verify that kubelet to API server communication channels are valid and not regressing, more so than saying does a kubelet of any n-1, n-2 version function as expected, right? We've already verified that in that particular version specific thing. So thank you to SIG Cluster Lifecycle for providing that level of testing. And I think that meets the bar, I hope others agree, of what we would be trying to do as appropriate SKU. The one additional comment I would have is that I'm aware that we are debating the number of releases that we are potentially looking to support as a project. My personal opinion is that if we shrink the number of releases, I actually would be open to revisiting this discussion and saying n-2 SKU is no longer as critical, and we could go and do n-1. But to me, that's a topic we should evaluate with clear eyes as we potentially change the Kubernetes release cadence. But my view is our present cadence was because you wanted to mitigate workload disruption boundaries. And if we have elongated release cycles, there's a different workload disruption boundary we could talk through. So I'll pause there and see how others feel.
Well, I agree we don't need to test full kubelet functionality just because there's a SKU. And those are separate things. We're testing that the kubelet understands the API server still, and the API server didn't break something backwards compatibility-wise. So that makes total sense. It does look like, I'm looking at that mail, that the performance suite is run against it with the SKU, which actually would test some of that functionality, but it's probably somewhat redundant. but still that exercises all that machinery. I don't have a problem with that really. Yeah, I agree that that's a separate discussion of whether right now we declare this support, so we should be testing for this support, and whether we declare different support is a different topic. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I raised, like, do we even want to support this, is it certainly is a lot of extra work that we need to be accounting for example, in like production readiness review for PRs, we care about like, have you thought about this SKU testing and how we're going to manage that phasing? And I think it does, it could potentially like reduce a lot of surface area for testing and cases that we had to care about, but I don't have a strong opinion either. I just want to.
Reducing surface area for testing doesn't help us when in reality we need to upgrade the SKU. So, like the N-2 versus N-1, yeah, but it's certainly. I mean, we need to be able to do progressive component upgrade.
I don't know what the history was, but I heard at some point that part of the issue with why we stopped doing this was that there were like breaking changes that made the 2 release span either impossible or broken or something like that, or it was just too difficult to test. I'm not really sure what the context was because I was not involved at that time, but I would be potentially worried about that as a risk. But either way, I mean, if we have the test infrastructure, if we're willing to set it up and maintain that, then I don't have any issue with saying it's supported. That's for sure. I think we got to do the verification.
Yeah, my ears definitely perked up when I heard something about an actual incompatibility. I am not aware of one. I know of test environment issues, like upgrade tests, not like the test framework not being maintained or not working well. SIG actually went and did a lot of work to get that running again last release, so we could test like the server's account token upgrade feature. So I know the test bits were not in a great state, but I would be very curious to hear if there were specifics about that.
That it was actually like the test suite, because I don't have any firsthand experience.
Yeah. I was really happy to see Libremere and Cluster Lifecycle jump in with that. I would like to, so in the past we've had stuff get set up and be like in good shape for a release or 2 or 3 or 5. It looked like those tests were generated, which is good. So it'd be good to make sure that whatever regeneration or bumping of that needs to happen with each release is like part of the release playbook, so that happens and doesn't sort of drift off into oblivion once the Libremere gets pulled away. It's awesome that he was able to set that up, but I don't want to depend on one person to kind of keep it going.
Yeah, I'm trying to spread the knowledge, but there's also the problem of people not having interest in maintaining end-to-end test jobs. But we definitely try on this effort, teach more people. I actually, these tests are not generated. I write them by hand every time. Yeah, maybe one day we can have tooling. Right now, what we do, we ask kindly somebody to help with adding new jobs for 121, for example. We carefully review it. If there are problems, we fix it, but it's a manual process for now.
Okay, I just read some of the comments on the pull request. Looked like it was talking about templating and stuff, so I thought it was generated.
Is that all documented though in the release handbook?
It is documented in the kubeadm docs at least. So
we have the release team has a bunch of handbooks for different roles, and I wonder if there's a role like I don't know if it'd be I mean, it's not really CI signal, but I don't know who it would be, but somebody maybe in the release team, this is something that has to be done with each release. I don't know, maybe it could live there.
Yeah, so the way we handle this currently is we have a punch card every release for the kubeadm jobs. Okay. And somebody signs up and they help us with updating all the items in the punch card. So it's like a housekeeping task for every release that we have. And the docs cover how to update the end-to-end test as well.
Okay, that sounds good. Sounds like Derek has a hand raised.
Yeah, so our skew, I thought, covers kube proxy and kubelets. So I just wanted to verify that the test that's posted here handled the kube proxy skew as well, or just kubelet skew.
Can you remind me what was the kube proxy skew against the kubelet?
My understanding is that we assert that kube proxy and kubelet can be n-2.
Okay. So in these tests, the kube proxy version matches the version of the control plane. So the API server is n, kube proxy is n, and the kubelet can go back to n-2.
Am I misunderstanding what we reported? I think, Jordan, you wrote that doc, but I thought we say they version together.
I am pretty sure that we said that it was supported so that you could have immutable nodes. Let me go look it up.
Yeah. And then the other question is, like, since I did raise I am personally a fan of, if we shrink our release cadence, that we could shrink our supported skew. As a matter of like project governance, is that a SIG architecture decision or a owning SIG decision? People have feelings on that. I don't know if we have a good clarity on that.
I would think the overall skew policy would be something we would want SIG architecture to make a decision on, because it crosses multiple SIGs. And it's about how we manage our deployments and upgrade processes.
That's good, John. I just want to make sure that like this was the right forum to even bring the question.
I mean, yeah, in my opinion, yes.
And so I agree. And then I guess I've let my biases be known. If we change our release, I think we should change our skew. But yeah, we can get to that when we get to that point.
Kube proxy, we document that it can be at most 2 versions older than the API server. So the typical deployment model when this was originated was kube proxy running as a static pod on the node and left at the same version for the lifetime of the node. So if the kubelet was 2 versions older, kube proxy was as well.
Lubomir?
I wanted to mention that I think Aaron created an issue somewhere that to update the SIG architecture charter with respect to the ownership of the skew, I think, but I forgot where it was. But basically, it was what we are discussing here. SIG architecture governs the skew, but the individual SIGs provide feedback on the component specifics.
Okay. You're saying that that was something Aaron opened an issue to revise our documentation about that?
Yes, but I don't know where it was.
Okay.
John, I'll take the action item to follow up on that if we wanted to have it
Okay.
there. I think
Sure.
it's right to clarify it and just make clear that we know where we go talk to. It'll be the SIG. So it seems like kube proxy is a gap with respect to our reporting. This could be the first point where we have that conversation. I don't know if we want to have that conversation today or get more detail on if it's Jordan, if you said the deployment patterns of practice were one particular way versus another, we could see if we want to revisit how kube proxy skew should be, but it seems like we have that gap right now.
Did we also have a skew between the kubelet and kube proxy itself? I remember something about IP tables. I mean, this is problematic. We cannot test a kubelet and a kube proxy so far apart.
I'm struggling to remember if there was a specific IP tables like configuration problem or if it was the old IP tables versioning problem.
Yeah, my memory was it was more IP tables and the OS kernel
Yeah.
weirdness, not kubelet related, but I could have missed a kubelet issue as well. But those are pretty loosely coupled.
Okay, I guess we can test it and see what happens. If there's something, I'm going to bring it to the appropriate people, I guess.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I put some notes in the doc. Looks like Lumir, you found the ticket. So yeah, if we can just put that in the doc, in the agenda doc, and any other, if I missed anything, please correct my note. I think, Jordan, that's for, let's test our own by cluster lifecycle, right? Not SIG network, the key proxy test there. I don't know if that's something you can do easily over here. I'm sorry, I'm responding to Jordan's comment in the notes, which is that the Q proxy is missing. If you're not watching the notes, you don't know. Q proxy is missing from that test, or is the wrong SKU. Can we update these tests that are doing the kubelet SKU to also keep Q proxy at the same version as kubelet in those tests?
I think kubeadm deploys kubeproxy with a daemon set. Am I correct?
Yes, currently it's much easier for us to deploy the same version of kubeproxy as the version of the API server mechanically.
Yeah. So like if test, so the way kubeadm deploys things happened to allow them to do a setup that tested the kubelet SKU. I don't know that cluster lifecycle owns modifying their tool to allow testing SKU.
Yeah, I hear you. That makes sense. That's just unfortunate we can't stick it in the same test, but if it's difficult, we just may have to look at that. So Tim, you willing to sign up for that SIG network?
Sorry, I stepped away for just a second and I caught the end.
I caught you.
I hear you. Yeah, I will own it.
So the issue is that in these SKU tests, right now, it's done by kubeadmin, which deploys kubeproxy as a daemon set, and it's kind of difficult for them to necessarily deploy kubeproxy in a version different than the control plane, which they can do with kubelet easily, but not with kubeproxy. So the question was whether it's really then that SIG network, given that it owns kubeproxy, should be doing the SKU test for kubeproxy. And
I think that's a fair statement. I don't think we have explicit testing for that in place.
Okay, so let's create an AI then for SIG network I'll create a SIG network issue there because that's fine. Okay.
We can test it in kubeadm as well, but it's going to be a bit of a hack because we have to deploy the daemon set first and then delete it and create a new daemon set with the different version of kubeproxy from the control plane.
Yeah, let's have a specific chat about the best vehicle for testing this because I actually don't know.
Okay. Okay, awesome. All right, any other comments on this, or are we wrapped on this topic? Okie dokie. Thank you, everybody. Next, then, it is Hippie for an update from the Conformance subproject.
Ooh, if I can share my screen, I'll also drop a link we're always looking for reviewers. Everybody's eyes are extremely valuable and we have to put them all over the place. But if we could raise the flag to get a few eyes on some of our stuff, that would be great. Let me try to share screen. Desktop here. Oh no, don't leave meeting. That's the wrong button. I think we've gotten to the doc. So that link here, we just have a few PRs needing review. We have our ineligible endpoints YAML, which would be great to take a look at. It is rather than the II and API Snoop team handling out of tree, the endpoints that are part of GA or alpha or beta until we can get some more metadata within the API export, which is some really cool stuff happening in that regard. And then we have a test in by Claudio, which also looks like it's ready for some review. And we have the service lifecycles test. But that was just a quick note for that. Overall, we've been working on this project for quite a while now. And I just want to note that we have crossed the halfway part. Back at 115, we had 266 operation IDs or API endpoints that were untested. And as of right now, I believe we're at 133 remaining. Our end of year goal, just so we're kind of get it in context, is to get below 75. And we are on target for that. Within our 121 release, actually go and show you on the API Snoop where this data comes from. Our conformance progress area, this would have been 115, where we have this 260 area here, and here's our remaining 133. And if you click on that, you can actually get the list of specific endpoints.
We're not seeing your, we're just seeing your.
You're still showing the project board.
Weird. All right, give me just 1 second. Stop share. Share. Desktop 1, yes. Share. And now I'll also drop the link to everyone. This is the
black.
It's just black.
all right, I will I'll stop sharing. I'm on a normal Mac, nothing's different, Zoom client. I can still, if you'll just pull up the I can just ask people to click on links.
I can share it. I can share it with you.
Cool. This is we're almost there. I think probably mid next year, by halftime next year. And our goal right now is we're for this release trying to get in our 30 points. I think we're at 22 right now. Even though the graph is a bit strange, it's because we had a couple of tests that we modified, but we don't know how to, it's not easy to try to count some of the points inside of a test just for the endpoints we hit, but we are keeping track of those. A big deal for our apps endpoints is we have moved from 48 to 58%. So if you click on that 58% tested link in the doc, it'll show the the sunburst for specifically apps and see how close we are to wrapping up apps. And a lot of our endpoints for the next probably release or so will be focused on those 37 remaining endpoints. And they've been super helpful as a SIG and helping us with that. We have 2 more tests inside the 121 that are ready to go for test grid. One is a write service status. Would appreciate an LGATM and approve on that if you're in the owner's files. And we have a new merge today that we're going to wait to start soaking, so we can get our 2-week promotion in there in this release to get us closer. We have a flaky test that's been identified, and there's a bit of discussion on how deep we need to go with regards to increasing timeouts. A lot of the things we've seen when things seem to be under load, you can kind of see the entire load for the entire job go up. and we don't understand why the load changes, but it's consistent. It started on this date. And I'm hoping we can resolve this quickly with the timeout so that this couple of endpoints, this +4 endpoints, is again shifted into the next release. That's and the last one, oh yeah, the ineligible endpoints.yaml, which I talked about earlier. We just need, we've talked about it before. I just need to get the last few folks to weigh in on that and do that merge. And from here on out, it'll be a manual. You can just even go into GitHub and edit it and add or remove 3 lines that say this is an endpoint that we're not going to have part of conformance, rather than having Zach update the SQL queries that are part of the API Snoop database. Yeah, this is definitely the timing. So we need any help for that particular flake and the conversation. Yeah. It's a pretty deep. Again, it's questions that are why is it stuck, and we just see a pattern of things getting overloaded, and it just takes longer for things to happen. So we have to increase those timeouts. Once they're increased, it tends to consistently pass. So
right, but the question is always, is it taking longer because of infrastructure issues, or is it taking longer because somebody broke something somewhere that it's causing additional latency and whatever? So it takes a little bit of research. Basically, the point of this comment is basically, did something else get broken? I haven't read it in detail, but
that's normally where we jump over to like scale tests and see if the CPU floor, the latency floor, just jumped at the same time that this test started.
Jump over to scale tests for this particular test.
And this test was merged in 120, and it was doing quite fine until fairly recently. So the test itself should be okay. So we're looking at if there's something in the infrastructure. And Stephen also asked several questions in Slack about it as well.
Yeah, so there are 3 possibilities, right? Like some other regression could have caused CPU usage to spike and slowed everything down, and particularly affected tests that were close to their timeout, but were sort of skating by. And then as soon as everything slowed down a little bit, 5%, 10%, the tests that were close to their timeouts started failing. So one possibility is a regression, unrelated regression. That would be good to tag SIG scalability and see if the scale tests indicate anything has happened recently. Another possibility is infrastructure. So that's where we normally tag in SIG testing and see if the test pools are looking overloaded, IO throttling, stuff like that. And then the third possibility is a change in the test. If this test hasn't changed since 120, then it's likely not a new problem with the test, but before we bump up timeouts, we just want to understand, like, are we masking an issue? That's the main thing we're wanting to make sure.
Yeah, exactly. Well said, Jordan. So anyway, yeah, thank you. We'll take a look at that test. Looks like Wojtek is saying there's nothing he knows about in scalability perspective that's changed.
Yeah, but basically not. I'm not aware of any, like, the graphs look pretty flat, at least for the last 2 weeks. So I'm not sure exactly when that changed, but when that regressed. But if it's within the last 2 weeks, we don't see anything. I don't have the full context, so I don't know what exactly the feature is. So it's possible also that we don't test that. But
the flake is actually at the very top. There's a link to somebody noticing the flake. It's 98180. The PR looks to address the, yeah.
It's waiting for what? Right here it says the condition, and then it looks like the condition is something around a pod getting running.
The test is just waiting for the deployment, for the replicas to scale
Right.
on the initial part. It's failing in two separate parts of the test. One at the start and the other one when it's waiting for a watch around a fetch. And I was looking a little bit more at the test grid, and it's perfectly okay on the one that I referenced at the top. But then when I looked at the kind and the kind IPv6, it's got irregular flakes turning up. But then some of those timeouts, they're quite low in comparison to some of the spikes that are happening for, I think it's the normal conformance test grid that we use to check that if a test is all okay before promoting it.
Okay, so if I understood what you said correctly, you looked at the test grids. The next question is there an infrastructure, a widespread infrastructure issue that's causing test jobs to run longer or flake? And so that would be the next question. And if, you know, looking in detail at, like, is this really just, it just took a long time to get to running, or was there something stopping it? You know, was it, where did it get stuck? Was it able to schedule, you know, all that sort of thing? Okay, I mean, I don't know. It sounds like it's likely infrastructure, but I can't say. But yeah, it'd be nice to have a little bit of a little more look into that, and then we can.
Yeah. Try to identify the infrastructure thing. And I think what we've done in the past is try to correlate the flakes to increase loads in the job and like the entire time for the run to occur. And if we can show a pattern of that as a reply here, then that will help to focus on it's not a scalability problem, but likely an infrastructure problem because of that correlation. Excellent.
Okay. Any other discussion here? Anything anybody needs, or are we all done? Okay. Oh wait, Dims, you snuck one in. All right. Need reviews for Adadoc on how we work with feature gates.
Hi. I was trying to, well, Elana started this saying we don't have a doc for this. What do we change in features.go, and when do we change it, and what do we change it from and to? So I ended up just looking through some old PRs, looking through the traffic in the Git history, and tried to summarize what I saw. But I would like you all to take a look at it. Especially, I think there is one last bit which I wasn't too clear about. So I need some help wrapping it up.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take a look at that. Everybody who's interested. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Unless there's any other business, I think we'll get back 20 minutes or so here. Thanks a lot.